You're listening to Real Life, No Filter, where raw emotions and real moments take center stage. No masks, no filters. Just honest stories about life, love, and everything in between. Get comfortable. We're about to begin. Olivia walked slowly home from the bus stop. Spring was just beginning to assert itself, and dusk was noticeably later. Just a couple of weeks ago, it would have been pitch black at this time, but now the sky was only painted in soft, pale lilac tones. In the woman's hands, heavy bags of groceries hung. Fruit for her daughter, fresh bread, a substantial piece of meat from which she could make both a rich borscht and a fragrant goulash. And of course, no shopping trip was complete without sweets. Today was payday. Tomorrow was a day off, which meant that in the evening, Olivia and Alice would have their traditional Friday movie night. Her daughter had already chosen some cheerful comedy. Olivia smiled. Alice. She was the one who filled her life with meaning and happiness, made it full and purposeful. The girl was now 8 years old. She attended school very close to home and showed excellent results. Although Olivia never sat with her over textbooks, perhaps only occasionally helping with extra projects, no more than that. The woman would have loved to spend more time with her child, but she had to work a lot, a great deal, to support herself and her daughter. But Alice managed perfectly well on her own. She was very responsible, smart, serious, and surprisingly independent. From the first grade, she had to do many things herself. She went to school alone, because by the time she left the house, her mother was already on the bus, halfway to work. She returned home to the silence of an empty apartment, tidied up, ate lunch, sat down to do her homework, set the alarm on her phone to get ready for practice on time. Alice played basketball in the school section. The coach spoke of her as a girl with an iron will and great prospects in the sport. Simply a miracle, not a child. Olivia smiled, thinking of her girl. Yes, she was incredibly lucky with her daughter. And yet her heart ached when she saw other children accompanied everywhere by caring adults, loving grandparents, stay-at-home mothers, fathers. These girls and boys had more time for games. They were constantly looked after. They were nurtured. Adults made the lives of these little ones happier, brighter, safer. At first, Olivia was very worried that her little girl with a huge backpack on her back walked everywhere alone. Colleagues never ceased to be surprised. "Aren't you afraid someone bad will take her? What if a dog attacks? What if she gets lost?" Olivia just sighed heavily. Of course, all these fears lived within her. There was no escaping them. But she was sure of one thing. Alice would not go anywhere with a stranger. She would avoid a pack of dogs, and she would certainly find her way home. She was surprisingly mature for her age, attentive, sensitive, intelligent. Besides, Olivia had no other way. She couldn't afford to stay home with her child, and even changing jobs to one closer to home didn't work out, because the brick factory where she worked as an economist paid well. It had cost her so much to get hired there. Her salary now exceeded the city average. The single mother and daughter lived modestly, but this money was enough for clothes, apartment rent, groceries, and even small entertainments. If Olivia had earned less, they simply wouldn't have survived. And then Eleanor would have been able to achieve what she had dreamed of for so long. Remembering her former mother-in-law, Olivia shivered. A terrible person. And yet, once, she had seemed so sweet, open, and friendly to Olivia. Many years ago, when Daniel brought a pregnant Olivia to meet his parents, the girl was very nervous. She understood perfectly well how their situation looked from the outside. A village girl with no money, no connections, no housing, had tricked a guy from a wealthy family, muddled his brains, taken advantage of his weaknesses, and deliberately gotten pregnant. And now Daniel was obligated to marry her as an honest and noble man. In reality, of course, it was all different. But even Olivia's classmates, who knew her very well, voiced similar assumptions. "Well done, you," the red-haired Chloe sincerely admired, hearing the news. "You look so quiet, so proper, and yet you managed to arrange your life in a way we could only dream of. Now you'll live and deny yourself nothing. Excellent plan. By the way, I should try that too. Why not? I also want to be the wife of a rich husband. A normal desire." The girls weren't sarcastic or malicious. They were genuinely happy for their friend, who, as they saw it, had pulled off a risky scheme and emerged victorious, receiving a proposal from an eligible bachelor. Perhaps after her friend's reaction, Olivia understood that everyone else thought the exact same way. And Daniel's parents? They would, of course, see her as an enemy. Well, naturally. A village limit arrived in the city and decided to establish herself here through a successful marriage. Daniel was indeed from a very wealthy family, but Olivia didn't learn about this right away. The guy wore simple jeans, t-shirts, and preferred comfortable sneakers to expensive shoes. Yes, it turned out the watch on his wrist and his mobile phone were expensive. An experienced eye would have immediately appreciated this. But how was a village girl to know the cost of accessories? A watch was a watch. A phone was a phone. Usually, Daniel came to the university on a motorcycle. Many guys arrived in expensive cars. There, it was immediately clear that their families had wealth. But here, a motorcycle. Olivia had always thought bikes weren't that expensive. Anyone could afford one. And Daniel also worked part-time at a large real estate firm, doing some not particularly skilled job, a courier or something like that. So Olivia wasn't surprised by his motorcycle. He had probably saved up from his salary or taken out a loan. At the beginning of his relationship with Olivia, Daniel didn't talk about the fact that the firm he worked for belonged to his father. The girl couldn't have imagined that his parents were so successful and wealthy. Olivia had observed Daniel from afar for a long time. They studied in different departments. The guy was a student in the prestigious finance and economics program. After school, Olivia had also really wanted to get into that. She prepared a lot, sitting over textbooks day and night, but she didn't get into that department. Olivia, a poor village girl, wanted to escape poverty. She had wonderful parents, kind, understanding, supportive. But Olivia didn't want to repeat their fate. They lived in a small house without plumbing, with a huge wash basin hanging on the wall where they had to wash. The toilet was outside, and there was a bathhouse in the yard, but it was only heated on weekends. Olivia's parents worked hard, but there wasn't enough money in the family. Was it like everyone else? Other families lived exactly the same way. It was just that there was objectively a lack of jobs in their village, and salaries were tiny. People didn't despair. They tried. They survived. But for herself, Olivia didn't want such a fate. Her parents supported their daughter in her desire to get an education and stay living in the city. They even tried not to burden Olivia with household chores, wanting the girl to devote all her time to studying. "Study, daughter dear," her mother instructed. "Study, don't be lazy. God willing, you'll make something of yourself. You've got a good head on your shoulders." "Your teacher says you're smart and promising," her father echoed. Olivia was indeed the best in her class. Studying came easily to her. She saw the university entrance exams as an important task that would be a turning point in her fight for a happy life. And the girl fought that battle with dignity. Based on the exam results, Olivia scored many points, a result that pleasantly surprised her. But these points were still not enough to get into the state-funded program of the Finance and Economics faculty. Olivia then felt disappointment mixed with surprise. How could this be? In her school, she was head and shoulders above others, and why had so many people suddenly surpassed her? Later, the girl learned about tutors who drilled applicants and about the gifts that prospective students' parents brought to the dean's office. But at the time, Olivia blamed herself for not preparing well enough. She was only a few points short of getting in on a budget. At the same time, she easily qualified for the paid program. Well, you'll study for a year or two on the paid program, and then someone will surely be expelled, and you'll transfer to the budget. An unfamiliar older student consoled Olivia. She couldn't just walk past Olivia, who was crying by the results board. Many people do that. You were only a little short of points, so you've got brains. They like and promote students like that. Olivia just shook her head. This girl couldn't understand that even a year's tuition fee was an unbearable burden for her family. Olivia had already decided that the year was lost. She would have to return to the village and prepare for admission again, more seriously this time. And even that wasn't a guarantee that the girl's dream would come true the following year. But that very same consoler, the random older student Olivia met, suggested a completely different solution. Why do you need this finance and economics program? She shrugged. Mostly only connected people study here, and children of rich parents. You get practically the same education in the enterprise economics department. It's even better, less pompous. How grateful Olivia was then to her accidental savior. She later tried to find this girl, talk to her, say thank you, but she couldn't. It turned out that Olivia's points were more than enough for the other department. So she did become a student after all. As a village resident, she was given a dormitory room and a social scholarship. Olivia couldn't believe her luck for a long time. The girl studied diligently, attended all lectures, submitted her term papers on time, and always did her homework. The professors praised her and held her up as an example to others. This made Olivia feel a little awkward. The girl devoted all her time and energy to studying. However, she also had to work 2 or 3 hours in the evening as a salesperson in the bakery nearest the dormitory. The scholarship wasn't enough to live on. Her parents, despite their best efforts, couldn't help their daughter. So Olivia managed as best she could. Naturally, she had no time at all for clubs, discos, or student parties. Sometimes this made her a little sad, but each time Olivia reminded herself of the goal she was working towards, and everything immediately fell into place. Her classmates often enthusiastically told her about their weekends, shared details of romantic adventures, and vividly described their admirers. At such moments, the girl also dreamed of having a worthy young man beside her. Loving, caring, cheerful, handsome, of course. Someone she could fall head over heels in love with. But the guys who came into Olivia's field of vision didn't fit the role of a prince. No, many of them were handsome and cheerful. But these young men, they seemed too carefree, frivolous, and selfish to Olivia. No, she couldn't tie her fate to any of them. Her friends jokingly called Olivia a bore, and when she refused to go to another party with them, they threatened that she would meet old age alone, surrounded by 10 cats. And then, in her 4th year, the girl finally saw a guy who didn't leave her indifferent. And how had she not noticed him before? Strange. The young man sharply pulled into the parking lot on a black motorcycle. He was wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and a helmet on his head. What attracted Olivia to Daniel then? The way he skillfully handled his iron horse, or his special, graceful posture? At that moment, he resembled a prince riding out for a stroll on a noble steed. Anyway, Olivia, who was rushing to the library, stopped and watched from afar as the motorcyclist dismounted and took off his helmet. For some reason, the girl really wanted to see his eyes. It would have been better if she hadn't. Because when Daniel, as if sensing her gaze, looked towards Olivia, the girl knew she was lost. Piercing turquoise eyes on a tanned face, a dazzling white smile, thick hair of some incredibly pleasant wheat shade. Olivia could have admired this guy endlessly if she hadn't had to maintain appearances. The girl suddenly felt awkward, standing here, staring at a stranger. What would he think of her? Olivia turned sharply and hurried towards the building where the library was located. The guy caught up with her. He caught up just near the entrance. He gently took Olivia's hand. She turned around and blushed, meeting his slightly mocking gaze. The stranger smiled at her warmly, openly, sincerely. Olivia had never felt such feelings before. It was hard to describe in words. Goosebumps ran in droves down her back and neck. Warmth spread through her body. Her heart pounded like crazy. That day marked the beginning of Olivia and Daniel's romance. At first, it was beautiful, like a fairy tale, but it ended more like a bad horror movie. Daniel confessed that he felt the girl's gaze and knew from her eyes that he could be happy with her. Later, analyzing the situation, Olivia realized that the guy was simply tired of the beautiful girls from wealthy families at that time. They were all spoiled, selfish princesses whom it was impossible to surprise or please with anything. And here was a simple, unsophisticated girl from the village, very pretty besides. Olivia looked at Daniel with loving eyes, hung on his every word, and admired everything he did or said. She was happy with such trifles as a simple bouquet of roses. The luxury of the restaurant's interiors amazed her. Daniel found it interesting to observe the behavior and emotions of an unspoiled girl. He was the person who opened a completely new world to the poor student. This was intoxicating, instilled faith in his own power and uniqueness, and tickled his ego. And of course, Daniel also developed some feelings for the girl for whom he was everything. Otherwise, it would be impossible. But the guy never intended to make Olivia the center of his universe. However, Olivia realized all this later, when problems began. At first, it seemed to her that Daniel was performing one feat after another for her. The guy spent money on his girlfriend without stinting. Olivia felt awkward about this. She even tried to refuse at first. If anyone, Olivia knew perfectly well that money didn't come easily. Daniel worked as a courier and earned money, but that didn't mean he had to spend it all on her. The guy just smiled at all her objections and gave Olivia another luxurious gift. Their relationship was sometimes like a romantic comedy, sometimes like a beautiful melodrama. Daniel was so sweet, so attentive. He courted her incredibly beautifully and always knew how to cheer the girl up. Olivia still devoted a lot of time to studying, but now lectures and seminars didn't make up her whole life. Surprisingly, there was enough time for everything, for dates with Daniel and for poring over notebooks. It was a wonderful, unforgettable time. Daniel and Olivia had been dating for about a year when the girl realized with horror that she was expecting a child. At first, Olivia couldn't believe what had happened. After all, they had been so careful. But one test after another consistently showed two bright lines. So she had to accept the fact. The girl was in despair. Her diploma was due, state exams were coming, the final stretch. She had been working towards this for so long. Okay, maybe the pregnancy itself wouldn't prevent her from preparing for the final tests. She would write her thesis, pass her exams and credits. But by the end of her 5th year, she would have a huge belly. Who would hire her like that? She would have to stay home and take care of the child. And what was the point of those 5 years of study then? Would Daniel be happy about this news? Would he take responsibility for Olivia and the child? Their relationship seemed elevated, trusting. But a beautiful romance was one thing, and a burden in the form of a pregnant Olivia was another. The girl cried for about an hour from despair, from hurt, from fear for the future. And then she calmed down and decided to tell everything to the person on whom her fate depended. Daniel took the news of Olivia's pregnancy unexpectedly joyfully. For him, it was still a game. Wow, we're going to be parents. The guy's eyes lit up. A smile appeared on his face. We're going to have our own little one. Cool. He was happy about the child like a new toy. Only Olivia didn't notice it then. She was happy that the man she loved didn't see the pregnancy as a problem. And what are we going to do now? The girl asked hopefully, looking at Daniel. We'll get married, of course. He smiled, putting an arm around Olivia's shoulders. We'll get married, finish studying, then I'll go to work, and you'll be on maternity leave. And where will we live? Olivia was very concerned about this question. She would likely be asked to leave the dormitory soon. Would she have to move into Daniel's apartment? Living with her husband's relatives would probably be difficult. They would have to get used to each other. Adjust. We'll live in my apartment. Daniel shrugged. My father gave it to me a long time ago. It's big, spacious. You'll like it. I would have moved there ages ago, but my mother, she said I could only do that when I got married. That was the condition she set. And now, I'm getting married. You have an apartment? Olivia still couldn't believe what she was hearing. Who are your parents? She knew little about Daniel's family. He preferred to change the subject whenever Olivia brought it up. Well, what's there really to tell about them? Daniel frowned annoyedly. Folks are folks. My mother's a housewife. Spent her whole life looking after me and my brothers, taking us to clubs, all that. She has 3 of us. Remember I told you? Olivia nodded. Daniel had indeed mentioned that he had 2 older brothers. Well, there you go, the guy continued. So my mother takes care of the house. My father runs his business. He has a real estate agency. Didn't I tell you? No. Olivia shook her head. Daniel had never said that the firm he worked for as a courier was owned by his own father. Well, there you go. Now I'm telling you. So don't worry, we'll definitely have somewhere to live. By the way, I need to introduce you to my parents. Now my mother will be happy. She thinks I'm scatterbrained, always holds my older brothers up as examples, saying they're serious, unlike me. Now she'll find out that I'm responsible too. Olivia was very afraid of meeting Daniel's parents. The guy was completely confident that his fiancée would be liked by both his father and mother. The girl herself had serious doubts about this. Of course, no one would believe that Olivia hadn't suspected Daniel's wealth. Look, even her friends thought she had deliberately gotten pregnant by a rich kid. What could his relatives say? But the introduction went more than successfully. Despite Olivia being initially flustered by the luxurious interiors of the mansion where Daniel lived with his parents, a round table was set in the living room. Everything looked appetizing and appealing. But from nervousness, Olivia couldn't swallow a bite. Daniel's parents introduced themselves. Eleanor, her future mother-in-law, smiled openly at the guest. She had the same piercing turquoise eyes as her son. The girl was amazed by how Daniel's mother looked. This woman was much older than her own mother, but Olivia didn't notice any wrinkles on Eleanor's face. A slender, toned figure, flawless skin, a stylish, elegant dress. The groom's father also didn't look his age at all, fit, energetic. In conversation, Daniel's parents, despite all their wealth, turned out to be pleasant and simple people. Upon hearing Olivia's story, Eleanor was delighted. "What a smart girl you are," she praised the girl. "You've already achieved so much through your own hard work. Amazing determination." "I need people like you." Arthur joined the conversation. "I'll hire you after your maternity leave, so don't worry about work." Olivia couldn't believe her happiness then. Everything happening felt like a beautiful fairy tale. Daniel's parents not only showed no displeasure with their poor, pregnant daughter-in-law, but on the contrary, were genuinely happy for her. "Our rascal needs exactly this kind of girl beside him." Eleanor shook her head, smiling at Olivia. "Responsible, serious, hard-working. What a blessing that you met." Olivia didn't understand then why his parents called Daniel a rascal. He seemed like a perfectly serious and responsible young man. Well, of course, he sometimes rode his motorcycle riskily, there was that. And he spent a lot of time with friends. But Daniel was still very young and carefree. It was natural that he wanted to have fun. When else to do it but in youth? Daniel's parents arranged a lavish wedding for the young couple. Olivia was embarrassed that they covered all the expenses. Her parents were also very uncomfortable. But Eleanor acted so simply, so naturally, that gradually the tension evaporated. Eleanor spoke to Olivia's mother and father very kindly and respectfully, and even thanked them for raising such a wonderful daughter. She smiled warmly at her daughter-in-law and showered her with compliments. Olivia truly looked like a real princess in the dress her mother-in-law had helped her choose and paid for. Dressed like that, the bride carried herself accordingly. Daniel was proud that his young wife was so beautiful. For the first half of the wedding, he didn't let go of her hand. But then, when the official part was over, the guy, as always, ran off to his friends. Olivia was happy for her new husband then. She liked that he was so sociable and cheerful. Married life at first also resembled a fairy tale. Olivia now lived in a huge, stylishly furnished apartment. Before, the girl had only seen such interiors in fashion magazines. It took her a long time to get used to being the rightful mistress of all this splendor. Olivia now had her own card, onto which a tidy sum magically appeared twice a month. This was Daniel transferring money to his wife for household expenses. Used to saving on everything, Olivia initially didn't even manage to spend her salary. It was so wonderful, so unusual, to go to the store and throw everything she liked into the cart instead of searching for discounted products. The girl's relationship with Daniel's parents was excellent. She considered them family. Eleanor often invited her daughter-in-law over. They talked for a long time. Olivia told her about her life, and her mother-in-law about hers. It turned out that Eleanor had also been born and raised in a village, and then her family moved to the city, where the still very young girl met Arthur, her future husband, and the father of their 3 sons. "He was just a simple accountant at the factory then," the woman recalled the past. "It was later that Arthur started his own business. I helped him, supported him as best I could. So it's our joint brainchild." And Eleanor often said that she had dreamed of having a daughter her whole life. "I wanted a daughter so much, but we only had boys. And the youngest, your Danny, was born only because I was hoping for a girl. The last attempt. And then another boy. And strangely enough, the most loved of all 3. Although at first, of course, I was very disappointed. I was sure I was carrying a daughter this time." Eleanor's 2 older sons had given her a total of 4 grandsons. So even there, the woman didn't get to cuddle a beautiful granddaughter. I dream of buying my granddaughter dolls, braiding her pigtails, choosing beautiful dresses with her, doing everything I wanted to do with a daughter. And here are boys again. Model trains, construction sets, cars. No, I adore them, of course, but I want something sweet, girlish, pink. You're my only hope now. Before this confession from her mother-in-law, Olivia hadn't cared about the sex of her baby. But after that, the girl suddenly realized that she too dreamed of a little girl with turquoise eyes like Daniel's and long, beautiful hair. It really would be wonderful to braid pigtails, tie bows, dress the little one in pink dresses. Daniel, on the other hand, dreamed of a son, so he said. Although Olivia increasingly began to feel that he didn't care about this child at all. Daniel spent a lot of time at work, and in the evenings and on weekends, he went off to his friends. This was so unlike the beginning of their relationship. Olivia hoped that when the baby was born, her young husband would settle down. But she was mistaken. Everything got even worse. Alice was born on time. When Olivia was placed on her chest, this tiny red creature, the girl understood. From this moment, her life was divided into before and after. Now she was a mother. Daniel and his parents arranged a lavish discharge from the hospital for Olivia. Everything was there. An entertainer in a bear costume, pink and white balloons, flowers, happy and touched relatives, and, of course, a cameraman who captured every moment of the celebration. Eleanor tremblingly took the pink bundle into her arms. At last, her long-held dream had come true. Now she had a granddaughter, long awaited and loved. Daniel, of course, also seemed happy, and even posed willingly for the photographer with his daughter in his arms. But Olivia immediately noticed that he was bored with it all. There was no genuine joy in the young father's eyes. Olivia didn't even notice a glimmer of the delight and admiration she herself felt, or even her mother-in-law, Daniel's mother. Family weekdays flowed on. Olivia completely immersed herself in caring for her daughter. Eleanor often visited the young mother and her newborn girl, teaching her daughter-in-law how to care for a baby. And Olivia was a mother for the first time and didn't really know anything. How could she? True, the learning wasn't that difficult. Very soon, Olivia felt quite confident. But Eleanor continued to come, and the girl didn't object. She saw how happy her mother-in-law was with her long-awaited granddaughter. It was wonderful that someone else besides the parents loved the child, especially since Daniel wasn't very interested in Alice. His daughter seemed to irritate him. He frowned when the girl suddenly started crying, especially after bedtime, complained about sleepless nights. No, Daniel didn't get up when the baby cried. Olivia always rushed to the little one. It was just that these nighttime commotions interfered with the head of the family's full sleep. Daniel spent more and more time away from home. The young husband might not even come home to sleep. To all his wife's questions, Daniel replied that he wasn't her slave after all, and had the right to a break from family. Gradually, the rose-tinted glasses fell from Olivia's eyes. Daniel showed himself as he was. This was why Eleanor called her youngest son a rascal and insisted that he was scatterbrained. Daniel turned out to be completely unprepared for family life. The worries about a small child burdened him. No, at family celebrations, he gladly held his charming, dressed-up daughter in his arms. Olivia saw that her husband was simply admiring himself and was proud of his new role as a father. But on ordinary days, Daniel avoided any contact with the little one. He now preferred not to talk to Olivia. This was hurtful and confusing. Eventually, Olivia, of course, found out what was going on. For the first time, she accidentally overheard her husband's conversation. One morning, Daniel thought his wife was in a deep sleep after rocking Alice for 3 hours. The little one hadn't been feeling well. The girl had been fussy the day before and would only doze off in her mother's arms. But Olivia couldn't close her eyes from exhaustion and, of course, heard everything. Although Daniel tried to speak quietly, he was cooing, there's no other way to put it, with some girl who was, judging by his words, very young, calling her Bunny and my love, laughing at her replies and promising that they would have fun soon. Olivia lay in bed, barely restraining herself from bursting into the kitchen and causing a scene. But it wouldn't lead anywhere. Daniel had long since become practically a stranger to her. They lived together. That was true. Daniel, importantly, fully provided for her and Alice. And what could she give her daughter if she left him now? So she had to pretend that nothing had happened. From then on, Olivia often noticed signs of Daniel's infidelity. Girls called him when he was home. The man barely hid it. No, of course, in his wife's presence, he spoke more reservedly than when Olivia, in his opinion, couldn't hear anything. Daniel might return home in the early morning, explaining everything with an important meeting with a business partner. At the same time, a bracelet from a nightclub often adorned his wrist, and Daniel's clothes reeked of women's perfume. And sometimes the man would go on another business trip for 5 to 7 days, from which he invariably returned refreshed, rested, and sometimes even tanned, clearly under the southern sun. Olivia endured all this, feeling humiliated, crushed, lost, and broken during this period. She still loved Daniel, and, until recently, believed that he had feelings for her too. Well, yes, he had cooled off a bit. That happens, especially after a baby arrives in the family. For some men, it's like a test of strength. But Daniel, it turned out he was having an affair, or probably affairs. He addressed his young and, undoubtedly, beautiful interlocutors differently. Sometimes Christina, sometimes Alana, sometimes even Caroline. Olivia, after putting little Alice to bed, often cried, curled up in a ball in the armchair near her daughter's crib. The woman understood that she was in a desperate situation. Living with a husband who cheated left and right was unbearable. At the same time, Daniel had long since looked at her, his lawful wife, as if she were nobody. And when was the last time they had a heart-to-heart talk? Olivia couldn't remember. She had to leave him. Otherwise, the woman would soon completely lose herself. But what next? Where could she go with a small daughter in her arms? To a rented apartment again, of course. But she would have to go back to work. Alice was still a tiny child. She would surely get sick a lot in daycare, like all young children. Who needed an employee like a young mother constantly running off on sick leave? It was unlikely Olivia would find a job during this difficult period. Returning to the village was also not a great idea. Olivia herself had once put in maximum effort to escape from there, and now to live in a tiny house without normal facilities again, and moreover, condemn her daughter to such an existence? No, she had to come up with something else. Her mother-in-law, Eleanor, continued to visit her daughter-in-law and granddaughter often. Each time she brought Alice lavish gifts, sometimes a dress from a renowned couturier, sometimes tiny gold earrings, sometimes an expensive doll, sometimes some interesting game. It was clear that the elderly woman doted on the girl. Olivia, as the mother of this long-awaited princess, also received gifts and attention. The sensitive Eleanor had long noticed that her daughter-in-law looked sad and thoughtful. She asked her directly many times, but Olivia always avoided answering. She said she hadn't slept well with Alice, that her head hurt. No, Eleanor was a wonderful person. Olivia had no doubt about that at the time. But how could she talk about the humiliation Olivia had to endure day after day? But one day, the woman realized she had to act. It happened on a rainy autumn evening. Daniel came home late, told his wife he had a business dinner at a restaurant. Olivia pretended to believe him, as always. But then she accidentally saw a photograph. Daniel was scrolling through his phone's feed, looking at something, and smiling happily. The woman only glanced at the screen and was stunned. There was a photo. In it, Daniel was posing, arm in arm with a beautiful blonde. She was smiling broadly and pressing gently against the man. It was a selfie. And then, as they say, Olivia's visor dropped. "What is this?" Olivia, against her will, immediately burst out screaming. Daniel raised his completely calm eyes to her. This photograph, this indifference, this calmness of her husband, who seemed to see nothing at all unusual in the situation, finally drove Olivia over the edge. Long suppressed emotions burst out along with sobs and insults. She called her husband the worst names, shouted hurtful phrases right in his face. She wanted to hurt him as much as possible. Olivia expected Daniel to start making excuses, maybe even apologize. But he looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust and remained silent. Olivia suddenly, completely losing control, slapped Daniel hard. She put all her strength into the blow, so it was quite forceful. As if in slow motion, Olivia watched Daniel's head snap back. He even had to grab onto the table to keep from falling. Olivia got what she wanted. She had shaken her husband out of his state of cold indifference. Daniel looked at her with such malice that the woman went cold with terror. The man strode towards her and grabbed her hair tightly. Olivia fully felt her husband's strong grip. If he wanted to, Daniel could easily crush her with both hands. It was clear that the man was barely restraining himself. Olivia, her eyes wide with fear for her own life, looked at her husband and blamed herself for the unexpected outburst. "Listen to me carefully," Daniel hissed. "I'm telling you this once and only once. I won't repeat it. If this happens again, you'll fly out of this apartment like a cork from a bottle. You'll be just as penniless as you were before. You won't see any alimony because most of my salary is unofficial. You'll get pennies. Do you understand?" Olivia nodded silently, already starting to tremble violently. At that moment, the woman wanted only one thing, for all this to end quickly. But Daniel didn't let go of her hair. On the contrary, he continued to wrap it around his fist. "Do you think I don't understand that you deliberately got pregnant by a rich guy? Do you think you're the only clever one? I didn't marry you because you're so cunning and shrewd. I'll explain why now. First, you used to be quite good-looking. Second, a marriage with someone like you should be easy and not burdensome. People like you should be happy with the conditions you've found yourselves in. Raise the children, serve your husband, and don't open your mouth unnecessarily. Everyone has their own benefit. Yours is prosperity, wealth, a calm, secure life. Mine is freedom. Do I really need to explain this? Spell it out? Is it really not clear to you yourself?" Daniel pushed his wife away forcefully. Olivia stumbled backward towards the door. The man's eyes were still blazing with rage. Fortunately, he managed to restrain himself and didn't hit his wife, but he was clearly very close to it. Olivia understood at that moment. A similar scene would happen again and again. Daniel would find something to pick on, and he might hit her. He could easily hit her. And he would do it sooner or later. After what happened, life went on as usual. Daniel also disappeared somewhere day and night. Now he didn't hide. He talked to his girlfriends right in front of his wife. Olivia was no longer just hurt. She was scared. She understood that she couldn't live like this for long. Such an existence was slowly destroying her. But there was no way out. Daniel was right. She had nowhere to go, nothing to live on. And then, in despair, Olivia made the biggest mistake. She turned to Eleanor for help. The woman believed that her mother-in-law treated her well. She gave her gifts, always spoke to her exclusively kindly, constantly complimented her, saying her daughter-in-law cooked wonderfully and was raising her daughter correctly. Therefore, Olivia was completely unprepared to hear such words from Eleanor. "Well, that's not surprising," she shrugged. "Danny, he's been a rascal since he was young. I didn't expect— No, I used to think, I hoped he would settle down, grow up. But now I see clearly. He's an eternal child." "But what about me?" Olivia looked at her mother-in-law hopefully. Perhaps she would suggest a way out. "Well, what now? Live as you are. Daniel will provide for you and your daughter from head to toe, I guarantee that." "Well, what can you do? That's the price for a well-fed life." "You won't even talk to him?" Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. "I don't see the point." Eleanor shook her head. "You can't change Daniel." I can't live with him. I'll divorce him." "Foolish." Her mother-in-law seemed to be getting worried. "And how will you manage alone? Alimony will be pennies. You have nowhere to live." "I'll go back to my parents in the village. Better that than endure all this. Alice will grow up. Then I'll think about moving back to the city." "You'll take Alice?" Now Eleanor was seriously worried. "So I won't see her?" "No, I won't deprive you of her," Olivia assured. "You can come visit sometimes, or I'll come to you, but I can't live with Daniel anymore. He's cruel, selfish. It's destroying me." "So I'll see my granddaughter when you graciously allow it?" her mother-in-law clarified. It seemed she had ignored the words about her son. She was only concerned about Alice, her long-awaited, beloved granddaughter, the object of her grandmother's pride and adoration. "Well, that's how it turns out. I'm her mother, so it's up to me to decide who my child sees and when." "You're mistaken, dear. How good that you've confided your plans in me. The child will be left with Daniel in the divorce. I'll see to that." "No." Now it was Olivia's turn to be frightened. "Here, children are usually left with their mother. That's how it always is." "Yes, but that's if the mother is able to support the child. And you? Are you planning to deprive your daughter of normal living conditions? Take her to a remote village, to a house without amenities? And you don't have a job. But Daniel has a large, well-appointed apartment, and they'll draw up whatever salary is needed in the documents. So assess your chances yourself." "But Daniel doesn't need her," Olivia exclaimed in despair. She had not expected such a turn of events at all. Until recently, the woman had considered her mother-in-law a future ally, a helper. Frankly, Olivia had counted on Eleanor to help her with Alice both morally and physically after the divorce. But it turned out that her mother-in-law had simply decided to take her daughter away from her. "But I need her," Eleanor said slowly. "I've dreamed of a daughter, then a granddaughter, my whole life. So many plans, so many hopes. And now I have Alice. And now? Now you want to take her away? Oh no." Olivia still found the strength to leave her husband then. Alice had just turned 3. It wasn't easy. Olivia was greatly supported by her parents and aunt. They collectively raised money so that their daughter and niece could rent an apartment in the city, a well-appointed, clean, spacious one, such that it wouldn't raise questions from the guardianship authorities, to whom Eleanor had, of course, appealed. Her relatives paid the rent for a full 6 months. During that time, Olivia enrolled her daughter in daycare and found a job. Now she had good living conditions and a sufficient salary to support her child. That is, Eleanor couldn't take the girl. But the fight for Alice continues to this day. Olivia hoped that one of Eleanor's sons would have a daughter, and her mother-in-law would shift her attention to her. But Daniel, who soon after the divorce married a young woman who looked like a fashion model, became the father of 2 sons. The wife of one of his brothers also gave birth to a boy. So Alice remained Eleanor's only granddaughter, which was why she didn't give up. Her former mother-in-law kept writing complaints about Olivia to the guardianship authorities. Sometimes she wasn't looking after the child. Sometimes she was too busy with her personal life. Sometimes she was cruel to the girl. Both Olivia and her mother had already gotten used to the fact that police officers or representatives of the guardianship authorities often came to check on them. Naturally, they found no violations. But Olivia lived in constant fear. What if Eleanor, a rich and influential woman, came up with something sooner or later, eventually staged some situation? Olivia could no longer imagine life without Alice. The girl was the center of her universe. Everything Olivia did was for her daughter. Daniel wasn't interested in Alice's affairs and didn't participate in her life at all, transferring tiny alimony payments from the official part of his earnings. That was it. This approach suited Olivia perfectly. If he didn't interfere with communication, that was good, less hassle. It was a pity Eleanor wasn't so indifferent. Now Olivia was hurrying home. Alice was probably already waiting for her mother to return from work. Olivia had indeed been delayed. She had popped into the shopping centre for a minute, but ended up spending almost an hour there. So much new, so much interesting stuff, and good discounts everywhere. Now Olivia was rushing home, skillfully weaving through the passers-by, of whom there were many near the shopping centre at this hour. Suddenly, an old woman caught the woman's attention. Frail, hunched over, in an old coat, her head wrapped in a grey downy shawl, worn felt boots on her feet. The elderly woman's eyes were an amazing light blue colour, as if slightly faded. The old woman was looking around, addressing one person then another, but people didn't hear or see her. Passers-by hurried on their way without slowing down, but Olivia couldn't pass by. Drawing level with the old woman, she stopped. The grandma seemed to understand that she finally had a listener. She looked Olivia directly in the eyes and rustled in a quiet voice. "Daughter dear, please help. I'm in a desperate situation." Olivia saw that this was indeed the case. Judging by the old woman's expression, she was in a state close to panic. "What happened?" Olivia asked in the gentlest tone possible. "I came here for meat," the elderly stranger began to explain. "You know, there's a good place in the basement here. Well, anyway, while I was bustling about, I put my hand in my pocket, and my wallet wasn't there. And only then did it dawn on me. I forgot it at home, didn't take it, left it on the bedside table. It's all Jasper, the cat's fault. While I was chasing that rogue from the street, everything just went out of my head. Okay, I had money for a one-way ticket in another pocket, so I got here without a problem. But how to get home now, I don't know." "So you need money for the bus?" Olivia clarified. "Yes, I do," the grandma said, embarrassed. "It's awkward to ask like this, like a beggar. But what can I do? Bus drivers are mean now, they won't take you for free. And I need a long-distance bus too. I live outside the city, in a dacha village." I tried to go back, asked the driver if he'd take me without money. He chewed me out so badly in front of all the passengers that I'm afraid to ask another one now. "And did none of the passengers help?" Olivia asked, genuinely surprised. No, the grandma sighed sadly. Well, there weren't many people there, thankfully. Otherwise, the driver would have shamed me. Oh, he shamed me so much. It's all right. Of course, I'll help you. Olivia readily reached for her wallet. Daughter dear, thank you so much. God bless such a good, caring person. The elderly woman was almost crying with gratitude. Give me your address or phone number. Better yet, write it down. My son will transfer the money to you later. It's not necessary. Olivia smiled. It's not hard for me to help. Good people helped me too in a difficult moment. So, thank you, my dear. Olivia nodded and walked on. She was in a hurry. Alice was waiting for her at home. Olivia had a wonderful evening with her daughter. They indulged in ice cream and pizza, watched movies, cuddling on the sofa. At such moments, Olivia felt happy, safe. What warm and cozy evenings they were. The woman waited all week for Friday precisely so she could relax and rest like this in her daughter's company. Sometimes, very rarely, on weekends, Olivia would go out with friends or colleagues to the cinema, a bar, a nightclub. If Eleanor somehow found out about this outing, an obligatory visit from the guardianship authorities would immediately follow. And how did her mother-in-law manage to find out about her former daughter-in-law's personal life? Was she spying on her? Her friends thought it was high time Olivia found a man. Young, beautiful, her colleague Joanna urged her. And always alone. You can't live like that. Alice will grow up. She'll start her own life. And what about you? Will you be left alone? Olivia just smiled and shook her head. After Daniel's betrayal, all men seemed like deceivers to her. No, she didn't want to date anyone, go on dates again, hope again that she had met the ideal person, and then be bitterly disappointed. Oh no! And honestly, Olivia didn't have time for romances. Work, child, household chores and problems, and all this on her fragile shoulders. No thank you. She was completely not up to it. Saturday mornings in Olivia and Alice's family always started late. Mother and daughter preferred to sleep in after a hard work week and getting up at 6 in the morning. But this time, the sleepy silence of the apartment was broken by a sharp, piercing ring. Olivia struggled to open her eyelids and looked at the clock. It was only 10. I wonder who decided to disturb them so early on a Saturday. Neighbours, probably. The woman reluctantly got out of bed, put on her bathrobe. A sleepy Alice was already coming out of the children's room. She looked so sweet, so funny in her ridiculous pajamas with teddy bears. Well, the morning visitor hadn't let the girl lie in bed peacefully. Meanwhile, the doorbell rang a second time. "I'm coming," Olivia called out, trying to make her voice sound not too annoyed. The woman looked through the peephole, and immediately anxiety seized her. A man was standing on the landing, tall, young, a stranger. It wasn't one of the neighbours, as Olivia had first thought. "Who is it?" the woman asked. "My name is Anthony." The man behind the door introduced himself. "I have a few questions for you." Are you from the police? Or maybe from Child Protective Services?" Olivia was used to visits from officials, but usually they introduced themselves with their full name and title. And here, "No, I'm not from the police. You see, I'm the son of that old woman you gave money for a ticket yesterday." Ah, that's what this is about. The elderly woman had sent her son to return the money after all. But how did this man know her address? Olivia hadn't told the grandma yesterday. Strange and very suspicious. "I understand you're afraid to open the door for me." Anthony's voice came from behind the door again. "And rightly so. You have to be vigilant nowadays. Let's do this. I'll go out of the building now and wait for you on the porch. Okay? We'll talk there. All right, Olivia agreed. Indeed, this was the most reasonable option. At the same time, the stranger's morning visit still seemed strange and suspicious. First and foremost, Olivia was concerned about how this man had found her. The woman looked out the window. Anthony was indeed standing near the entrance, waiting for her. It was a little scary to leave the apartment. What if this man was some kind of criminal after all, and his accomplice was still on the landing? But there was no one near the door. Olivia went downstairs. Anthony met her on the porch. You see, I have a question for you. A delicate one, the man began. Olivia immediately tensed up. Something told her that the conversation wouldn't be pleasant. What is it? My mother. She's very old now. Age, her mind isn't quite right. She's not incapacitated, of course, but Mom, she's like a child, you understand? Olivia nodded. Of course, she knew that many people became childlike with age. And although yesterday's old woman hadn't given that impression, if her son said so, then it must be true. But what did this have to do with her, Olivia? Yesterday, Mom found herself in a hopeless situation, without money, far from home. She must have been desperate, which is why she offered you her item in exchange for a bus ticket. What item? Olivia asked, genuinely surprised. The old woman hadn't offered her any item. The only thing she asked for was a phone number to transfer money. What do you mean? What item? The man looked at Olivia intently. Something hostile appeared in his whole demeanour. She didn't give me anything. That is, nothing at all. She just asked for money. I gave it to her. And that was it. And that's it? You're lying to me right now. There are witnesses who saw and heard everything. In fact, it's thanks to them that I found you. A friend of mine works nearby. He saw the whole scene and then noticed which building you went into. And from there, finding you wasn't difficult. I just asked the neighbours which apartment you lived in and described your appearance based on my friend's words. I don't understand anything. Olivia shook her head. What are you accusing me of? Nothing yet. Mom gave you the jewellery voluntarily. You didn't extort it. There are witnesses to this. But now, when you're being stubborn, it doesn't look very good. You took advantage of the fact that the old woman wasn't in her right mind and acquired a valuable item. What valuable item? Olivia exclaimed. Just explain everything properly. I don't understand anything. And you seem to be a brilliant actress, Anthony sneered contemptuously. To be honest, I was hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding. By the way, it's a brooch, our family heirloom. Not only is it worth a tidy sum on its own, but it's also an antique, you understand? It's worth a fortune. And you think I have it? Well, who else? You gave the old woman money for the bus yesterday? Yes? Well, in return, she offered you her brooch. Perhaps you only took it because you didn't realize how valuable, how expensive it was. Anthony seemed to be giving Olivia one last chance to get out of the situation gracefully. I didn't see any brooch. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Mom said she gave it to the girl who paid for her fare. That's you, which means the brooch is with you. But no, how can I prove it to you? Just return the jewellery, and that's it. I have a witness, and Mom will confirm it in court, if necessary. She'll confirm that you took the jewellery from her. In court? Olivia felt cold, clammy goosebumps crawl down her back. This man, was he really going to sue her? This is absurd. But he had a witness. Apparently he really does. Otherwise, how would he have found her so quickly? And what if Olivia can't prove anything in court? What if she's accused of extortion? After all, no one is immune to judicial errors. There are plenty of such cases. Olivia clutched her head. She absolutely cannot become a defendant right now, or even a suspect. No way. Eleanor is aware of her every move. She'll surely find out about this whole story immediately, and of course use it to her advantage. Problems with the law for the mother? That's a significant argument for the guardianship authorities. They could take Alice away from her. This cannot be allowed. If you've already gotten rid of the brooch, Anthony spoke again in a soft, insinuating voice. Well, you knew they would be looking for it, right? So you sold it as quickly as possible. Then at least return the money. It's worth about... And the man stated a figure that made Olivia's head spin. She couldn't save that amount in several years, and she probably wouldn't get a loan. The previous one isn't paid off yet, and her salary wouldn't allow it. Unless maybe somewhere at a high interest rate? How would she live then? On what? The situation seemed hopeless. She couldn't let it go to court because in that case, her mother-in-law would finally get a chance to get custody of her granddaughter. But there was nowhere to get the money either. You're mistaken. Olivia tried to reach Anthony one more time. I didn't take this brooch, and I don't have the money. Excellent. Then we'll settle everything through court. The jewelry was insured. If your guilt is proven, which I personally have no doubt about, we'll at least get compensation. But you, in that case, will have big problems. Wait, Olivia exclaimed. Give me a little time to think. It's just that this trouble has fallen on me so unexpectedly, I don't even know what to do. Just give me the jewelry or return the money. Olivia shook her head. She wanted to scream right in the negative Anthony's face that she hadn't taken anything, but she probably shouldn't anger him, because her fate depended on him now. I need time. All right. Anthony nodded. But don't think for too long. We'll exchange phone numbers now. I'll call the day after tomorrow. I hope you'll have found the money by then, or finally decide to return the brooch, because otherwise we'll be talking differently, and most likely in court. Anthony turned sharply and walked towards the parking lot. Olivia watched him for a long time. Mum, what happened? Alice looked at her mother, who had returned after the unpleasant conversation, with fright. You're so pale. Who was that man? Oh, just an old acquaintance. Nothing serious. Olivia smiled weakly. Shall we make pancakes? Remember, you promised to teach me? Of course. Alice and Olivia spent about an hour in the kitchen. The girl chattered happily about her friends and teachers. The woman nodded, smiled where necessary, was surprised where necessary, praised. But Olivia's thoughts were far away. She was thinking about how to get out of this strange situation. Anthony won't give up. That's obvious. He's got it into his head that Olivia took the expensive brooch. Nothing will convince him otherwise. That old woman. Why did she say that about her? Maybe the grandma really isn't in her right mind and doesn't know what she's saying. Or did the elderly woman, having lost the brooch, invent a story for her son so he wouldn't scold her? Judging by how Anthony behaved, he can be tough, even cruel. Cold gaze, jerky movements. Anyway, Olivia now has to decide something. She absolutely cannot become a suspect right now. It's still unknown whether she'll be able to prove her innocence. There's only one option left. Find the money. But where? There's no one to help Olivia. Her parents themselves live in poverty. Her salary is good, of course. But the debt that has suddenly fallen on her won't be covered even in several years. And she's unlikely to get a loan. There was one way out. Turn to Daniel. The main thing is that the man doesn't blab to his mother. and she'll quickly figure out how to turn the situation to her advantage. She's been dreaming of taking Alice for herself for a long time. And Daniel, he doesn't need his daughter, that's for sure. He won't fight for her. She'll have to swallow her pride and hurt and call her ex-husband. How difficult is that? How unbearably difficult. Well, what can she do? Daniel never participated in his daughter's life, except for the meagre alimony that was deposited into Alice's card every month. Maybe, just this one time, he could help? For him, the sum Anthony is demanding isn't that large. Olivia sent her daughter to watch cartoons and dialed a number she hadn't used in many years. Daniel answered immediately. "Hi, we need to talk." "Is something wrong with Alice?" Daniel asked in a rather indifferent tone. "No, but it concerns her too. Something has happened to me." They met that evening at a cafe. Daniel had once invited Olivia here on dates. Years ago, they sold wonderful strawberry eclairs here. However, they weren't on the menu now. "So, what's happened to you?" Daniel's whole demeanor showed he had little time. 5 years had passed since their divorce. Daniel had barely changed during that time. He still looked like a carefree guy from a youth series, a stylish regular at nightclubs. Perhaps Eleanor was right. Daniel was an eternal boy. Olivia briefly told her ex-husband what had happened to her. A mocking look appeared in Daniel's eyes. "Yeah, something like that could only happen to you. He's a typical con artist. Scare him with a police report." "He's planning to file a report against me," Olivia sighed. "And I can't get involved with the police. You know your mother. She's just waiting for the right moment to take Alice." Mother. Daniel sighed sadly. "That's true. She's getting on my nerves too, always nagging me to sue for my daughter. Why would I need that? Besides, a child is always better off with their mother." Olivia nodded, and then asked again, "But will you help me? Will you lend me money? Without interest? I'll pay it back little by little with each salary." "No," Daniel replied. "I'm not going to sponsor criminals. He'll demand more later. That's the kind of people they are. You can't feed them." Olivia sighed. She already understood that she wouldn't get any help from Daniel. And anyway, turning to him was a mistake. "When he calls you, tell him there's already a report filed against him at the station," her ex-husband advised finally. Then he paid the bill and walked out of the cafe with long, sweeping strides. And Olivia was left alone with her problem again. Yes, she understood that Anthony might be a con artist, but what if he wasn't? She couldn't risk it, because Eleanor, she wasn't sleeping. Just recently, her mother-in-law had reported to the guardianship authorities that her daughter-in-law was out partying at night and neglecting her child. All because Olivia had gone to a friend's birthday party. Alice had indeed stayed home alone at that time. She had brushed her teeth, made her bed, and gone to sleep herself. Olivia returned when her daughter was already asleep. How did Eleanor find out about everything? Very simply. She saw a photo of Olivia on one of her friend's pages, matched the dates and times, and used this photo as evidence. Olivia was indeed advised at the time to hire a babysitter for such occasions, but they also sympathized. Living under the watchful eye of a former mother-in-law was difficult. Eleanor frightened Olivia more and more with her persistence and desire to take her granddaughter. If she found out about the court case now, she would use all her connections to fulfill her long-held dream. No, Olivia wouldn't give her that chance. What should she do? The woman decided to walk home. The way wasn't short, but the weather was wonderful. Spring. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. The sky was clear and bright blue, Not a cloud in sight. The snow was melting literally before her eyes. Thawed patches had already appeared on the asphalt. Before, Olivia always felt a kind of spiritual uplift at such moments. Nature was waking up, her favourite season, summer, was just around the corner. But today, her heart was heavy. An absolutely insurmountable problem had suddenly fallen upon Olivia. How to solve it? Look for money, or try to prove to Anthony that she was innocent? Both options seemed unlikely to work. Olivia ambled past the very shopping centre where she had met the old woman. Just their luck to run into each other that evening. If Olivia had gone home later or earlier, none of this would have happened. She would have lived peacefully, enjoying the coming spring, the sun, the upcoming vacation. And suddenly, the woman stopped as if struck by lightning. She even blinked several times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. The same old woman was walking through the parking lot, the coat, the downy shawl, and the eyes of an incredible light blue shade. Beside the grandma, carefully supporting her elbow so she wouldn't slip on the melting snow, walked a young man. And it wasn't Anthony. Not tall, light-haired, with a pleasant, open face, and eyes exactly like the old woman's. He was smiling and telling the elderly woman something. She listened attentively, occasionally interjecting her own remarks. The pair was walking away. They would probably get into this man's car and leave soon. No, she couldn't let that happen. Fate itself had given Olivia a unique chance to get out of a difficult situation. Now she would talk to the old woman, and perhaps everything would become clear. Olivia ran after the man and the elderly woman across the parking lot. Maybe they're in on it with that other man. Another unpleasant conversation awaits Olivia now. But it's worth trying, isn't it? Wait! Olivia called out to the old woman and the man when they were almost out of sight around the corner. The elderly woman was the first to turn around. For a moment, she peered at Olivia, squinting nearsightedly, and a smile lit up the old woman's face. Judging by her expression, she recognized the passerby who had given her money for fare a couple of days ago. The man, however, was seeing Olivia for the first time, and therefore looked questioningly at the stranger rushing towards them. "Hello," Olivia breathed out, catching up with the pair. "Good afternoon," the man greeted. "Hello, daughter dear." The grandma smiled warmly. "I recognized you. You were the one who helped me then. Thank you very much." The man, finally understanding what was going on, also smiled. "So you were the one who didn't pass by my mother then? She told me how desperate she was, and people just hurried past and paid no attention to her. Only you responded." "So you're also her son?" Olivia clarified. "What do you mean, also?" the grandma asked, surprised. "Victor is my only son, late, long awaited. Before him, I only had daughters. I have 4 daughters, all much older than my son. The older ones are grandmothers themselves now." "But what about Anthony?" Olivia stared wide-eyed at the mother and son. "What Anthony?" The old woman frowned. "I don't think I know anyone like that." "Did something happen to you?" Victor finally guessed. "And is it somehow connected to that time you met my mother? Is that right?" Olivia nodded silently. She didn't understand anything yet. One thing was clear. Anthony was a con artist after all, and now it was absolutely certain. But many questions remained. And the main one, how to act now. Anthony is a con artist. Olivia has come into his sight. Who knows how he'll behave? What if he starts threatening her? Or even does something to her? Or, God forbid, to Alice? How scary. "Tell us what happened," Victor asked gently. "Well, it's not your problem." Why take on unnecessary worries? Just please leave your phone number because it might be needed soon. Tell us. Victor gently patted Olivia on the shoulder. This friendly gesture, it changed a lot. The woman suddenly realized that she wanted to share her story with this man. She really wanted to. I should probably introduce myself first, she sighed. My name is Olivia. That evening, I was coming back from work. I left the shopping centre and saw an elderly woman. She was asking people something, but everyone was rushing about their business. And Olivia told them everything. How she gave the old woman money for fare, about the morning call and the conversation with Anthony, and she mentioned her own doubts and anxieties. She had to reveal details of her personal life to her listeners. How else would they understand why Olivia hadn't gone to the police immediately? Victor listened without interrupting. His mother periodically shook her head, clucked her tongue, and sighed, sometimes interjecting angry, condemning remarks. She rolled over Anthony, then over Eleanor. Olivia's former mother-in-law got her share, and Daniel, who hadn't helped the mother of his child in a difficult moment. What an inhuman person! The old woman shook her head. He understood that Anthony was a con artist. Well, he could have met him, talked to him man to man. Yes, girl, life is hard for you. All by yourself. After listening to Olivia, Victor silently pondered her story for a while. His mother, meanwhile, showered the woman with words of support. It was clear that she sincerely wanted to cheer Olivia up, instill in her confidence that everything would be all right. This care even brought tears to Olivia's eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. It wasn't time to relax now. We'll expose this, Anthony, Victor finally declared. And he said it so convincingly that Olivia felt it in every cell of her body. She was not alone anymore. She had found protection. This is strange, unexpected. After all, Victor and his mother are complete strangers. Still, Olivia had not the slightest doubt. Victor knew what to do in this situation. I have a good friend who works in the investigative committee. I started there myself, but then I went into business. I needed money urgently. My father was very ill. I'll call my friend right now, and I'll keep you updated on what's happening. You'll have to come in and give a statement. When exactly? I don't know yet, but definitely soon. Olivia nodded. Yes. Now it wasn't scary to go to the authorities. Thank you, the woman said. Thank you for your kindness. Why wouldn't I help a good person? The man smiled. His smile warmed Olivia's heart. You didn't pass by my mother either when she needed help, and you only got into this terrible situation because of us. On the way home, Olivia replayed the details of that conversation again and again. Imagine that. Could it really be true? Olivia was seriously afraid that meeting Victor had just been a hallucination. What if her brain, desperately searching for a way out of a difficult situation, had just invented this scene? No, that couldn't be. And yet, doubts lingered. Victor called a couple of hours later. Olivia hadn't expected such promptness. At first, she flinched at the sharp ring of her mobile phone. Fear squeezed her heart with a cold, clammy hand. What if it's Anthony again? He'll start threatening, accusing, frightening me again. But Victor's cheerful voice answered from the receiver. Can you be at Krasnoznamenaya in 40 minutes? They're waiting for you in office 307. They're already aware. Of course. Well, then everything spun with dizzying speed. Victor was already waiting for Olivia on the steps of the tall building with massive columns. Seeing him, the woman felt relief. He was there, so everything would be all right. Victor escorted Olivia to the investigator's office. He asked her questions about Anthony. Olivia described in detail the appearance and behavior of the man who had introduced himself as the son of the supposedly deceived old woman. "If he calls, stall for time," the investigator said finally. "We've started working on this guy. We'll begin gathering evidence, but we need at least a couple of days. Tell him you're arranging loans or something like that. Your phone is tapped, by the way. You're aware, you signed the consent yourself. So we'll hear everything he says to you." Olivia nodded silently. Victor offered to drive the woman home. She gladly accepted. Not because she didn't want to trudge to the bus stop. No, it was it's just so nice to spend a little more time with this person. Olivia was surprised at herself. She had only known Victor for a short time, but next to him, she felt such calm, such peace, that she didn't want to part with this man at all. What is this? The beginning of some feelings? Or is it just gratitude for a person who didn't remain indifferent to her trouble? What does it matter? The main thing is, they'll see each other again. The case isn't closed yet, and Victor promised to see it through, so that's how it will be. That evening, Anthony called Olivia again. Following the investigator's advice, the woman asked for a postponement. "You won't believe that I didn't take any brooch anyway, will you?" Olivia asked this question only so that Anthony would confirm his claims aloud. There was no brooch. But the man stubbornly insisted that Olivia had pulled a fast one on the elderly person and swindled the precious item from the old woman. "Aren't you tired of pretending?" Anthony hissed. "The brooch is with you. You took it from my mother, taking advantage of her helpless state. And now you're denying it. I'm calling the police." "No." Olivia feigned fright. "I can't fall under suspicion right now. The situation is such that it's easier to pay the money. I've already started arranging a loan, but the procedure isn't quick. You'll have to wait." "How long?" "About 2 days." "All right. I'll call again." And Anthony hung up. Olivia exhaled with relief. She had done it. She had managed to buy the couple of days the investigator had asked for. The rest of the evening passed as usual. Olivia helped her daughter with another project. They cooked dinner together and played Monopoly for a bit. Olivia tried not to think about Victor, but she couldn't help herself, recalling his light blue eyes and wide smile again and again. The woman chided herself. Most likely Victor isn't available. Maybe he has a wife and children? She's already dreaming here. If so, then his other half is lucky. Being with such a person is immense happiness. The next day also flew by, unremarkable. But then, during her lunch break, Olivia's mobile phone chirped cheerfully. The name on the screen was Victor. The woman's heart gave a sweet flutter. At the same time, an unpleasant chill appeared in her stomach. Who knew what news Victor was calling with? The man suggested meeting at a cafe near the building where Olivia worked. The woman, just in case, warned her boss about a possible delay from her lunch break and hurried to the cafe. Victor was already waiting for her at a table. He looked calm and happy. From his expression, Olivia immediately knew everything was all right. The woman couldn't help but admire Victor. High cheekbones, confidence, a calm gaze. "Good afternoon." Victor stood up from his seat and pulled out a chair for Olivia. Pure gallantry. "I have some news. Good news. More than good. I'll start with the main thing. Anthony has been apprehended. It turns out he had many victims in the works simultaneously. About 5 right now. And those are just the ones we've managed to identify." 5. Olivia, strangely enough, was even a little pleased by this information. So she wasn't the only naive fool who fell for Anthony's hook. 5, Victor confirmed. And then he shared details about the man who had demanded the expensive antique brooch from Olivia. It turned out he had grown up in an orphanage. Anthony didn't want to work in the profession he had learned there. A plasterer painter has to work hard. Anthony didn't like that. He liked the good life and easy money. At first, the guy was a pickpocket. He got caught a couple of times, but in both cases, he was lucky. The victims were moved by the orphan's pitiable story and withdrew their statements. Anthony realized that working in that role was risky, so he started acting more subtly. The young man figured out that there were many trusting and simply foolish people in the world, and that's who he could make money from without much effort. Anthony started pulling the wool over people's eyes over the phone. Many, without going into details, transferred quite decent sums of money to the guy's cards. Anthony sometimes even surprised himself with the size of the transfers. But over time, it became more difficult to work, too risky, hard not to leave traces. Anthony was invited to work for companies that professionally engaged in such phone calls, where the chance of getting caught was practically minimal. But Anthony dreamed of a solo career. The guy had no shortage of imagination or attentiveness. He liked coming up with new schemes, inventing incredible stories. This was apparently how Anthony's creative side manifested itself. The situation with Olivia turned out particularly interesting. He once accidentally saw her in court. She had ended up there again because of her former mother-in-law. The woman had then easily proven that she was perfectly capable of raising her daughter on her own. But Anthony immediately figured out Olivia clearly wouldn't want to become the heroine of a detective story to come to the attention of the police. And that meant she was an excellent potential victim. She wouldn't just not report Anthony, you could even threaten her with the police. Here, Anthony hit the nail on the head. He knew how to draw conclusions. So Olivia became a potential victim. Now Anthony occasionally followed her, waiting for a convenient moment. But the opportunity never presented itself. Olivia's life was measured, monotonous, in Anthony's opinion, even boring. The guy didn't worry. He always had work. People fell into his nets just like that. And it was always some completely unique story. Anthony was particularly proud of some of his exploits. Once, he managed to get an old woman from a neighboring house to sign her apartment over to him. Anthony convinced the elderly woman that he was the child of her deceased son. This turned out to be easy. The elderly lady herself desperately wanted to believe in the grandson who had suddenly appeared. The old woman was lonely, reclusive. Her only relative was a brother, who expected to inherit the apartment after his sister's death. But it didn't happen. The apartment became Anthony's property. Everything came out only after this grandma had passed away. True, such large fish didn't fall into his net anymore, but Anthony didn't worry about it. Greed is bad, even dangerous. And then suddenly, one day, completely by chance, Anthony noticed Olivia helping an unfamiliar old woman, and a plan instantly formed in his head. The story just came together. There was only one thing he didn't account for. Victor smiled. You accidentally ran into that very old woman near the shopping centre. The probability was minimal. My mother lives far from here, and Anthony, of course, found that out before acting. That's just how circumstances aligned. I can hardly believe it, Olivia said slowly. And what will happen to him now? He'll go where he belongs. He'll sit and think about his behavior. The investigator pulled on the threads, and so many other victims were found. Many of them have already given statements. Some are just getting ready to. In short, the romantic and creative guy is headed for the bunks. Olivia still couldn't believe that the problem that had poisoned her life for these few days no longer existed. The man took a deep breath and said, And I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of the savior role, all that. But if I ask you to the movies tonight, what would you say?" Olivia felt a pleasant warmth spread through her chest. What would she say? Yes. She had to hold herself back with all her might, not to scream with joy right now. Apparently, her emotions were clearly visible on her face, because Victor understood everything and smiled.